mugwumps. They're everywhere. They're speaking out. At board meetings, City Hall, Town Square, Courthouse, State House, even the White House. They must be stopped. They are disruptors.
Welcome once again, everyone, to Mugwump Media, and welcome, folks, to Disruptor Central. Now, my name is Juanita Bright, and hanging out with me in the studio today is the real disruptor, my husband, Kevin. Kevin, what do you have to say for yourself?
I'm just going to say it was like that when I got here.
Okay. All right, so say howdy, Kevin.
Howdy, Juanita.
All right. Now, if this is the first time that you folks have tuned in to our podcast, you are probably very curious as to what a mugwump might be. Well, if that's the case, I recommend that you go to our YouTube page and click on episode number 1, entitled, What is a Mugwump? That 18-minute video covers the history of the Mugwump Revolution of 1884. The Mugwumps were conservative Republicans who were tired of the corruption that had developed in the Republican Party over the span of about 20 years, after the Democrats had been crushed during the Civil War. 20 years of one-party rule had resulted in what was called patronage in the 1880s, and lots of it. The corrupt practice of rewarding politicians and supporters with jobs, positions of power, etc., in exchange for their votes and support. Does that sound familiar, Kevin?
Well, it sounds like I need to keep my opinion to myself, maybe. It might be a little dangerous to speak out.
Are you feeling unsafe?
I'm feeling unsafe a little bit, but you know what? I think I'll be all right.
There you go. Because the Mugwumps refused to toe the party line and vote for the Republican Party's corrupt candidate in the 1884 presidential election, they were hated by the National Republican Party, who gave them their name, intending it to be an insult and a slur. But the Mugwumps, who were led by Mark Twain, of all people,
a Missouri boy,
that's right, wore the name proudly as a badge of honor. And in the election, the Mugwumps joined the coalition that voted for fiscally conservative, reform-minded Grover Cleveland, who won and became the 22nd president, but he also later became the 24th president. Now, who else do we know that did that? To this day, Grover Cleveland is the only president other than Donald J. Trump to win 2 non-consecutive terms. As I always say, folks, history is repeating itself, not just on the national stage in 2024, but also in Jefferson City. Now, joining us today is a member of a small group of Republicans from the Missouri House of Representatives, who Senator Mike Moon calls the Brave 10. When the Missouri House voted for the 2025 Speaker of the House on January 8th, nearly all of the Republicans, a supermajority.
I like supermajority.
Sometimes.
Well, if they are,
unless
if
they
they
vote
truly
the wrong
are,
way.
yes. We might not have a supermajority.
That's right.
There's some questions, isn't there?
For sure. But on that day, nearly all the Republicans, a supermajority, voted for a very moderate Republican, one who had been pre-selected. This man voted 33% of the time with the Democrats in 2023, and also voted against protecting minors from transgender surgeries. Definitely not someone that you would call a strong conservative. And like the Mugwumps in 1884, the Brave 10 went against party politics and pressure. They listened closely to their constituents, and they voted instead for a true conservative and reform-minded candidate, Representative Justin Sparks. Now, right now, we are honored and we want to welcome one of those brave representatives, Missouri Representative Keith Elliott, to the studio. Welcome, Keith.
Hey, thank you so much. Thank you for what you do. Thank you for having me. It's an honor to be here today.
Well, we've already had so much fun talking to you. You're from where we're from. So
right.
we're having a great time. We love it. Now, Keith, a Republican, represents Carter, Oregon, and Ripley counties, and parts of Howell, Shannon, and Wayne counties District 153, in the Missouri House of Representatives. Now, Keith was born in Poplar Bluff and is a proud graduate of the Doniphan R1 School District. Keith has deep roots and dedication to his community and public service. He worked nearly 30 years with Missouri Department of Transportation, and also Keith is an active member of His Place Church in Doniphan. Reflecting his commitment to faith and community, Keith is also involved with Hope Partners Ministries, based in Tampa, Florida. In addition to his legislative duties, Keith is a cattle rancher. You're a cowboy.
Yes, I am.
I figured that about you just from our first telephone conversation. He greatly enjoys spending time with his family and prioritizes spending time with them. Keith was elected to his first 2-year term in November 2024. What I was telling you, I am amazed. It struck me this afternoon. I'm just amazed. Most of you guys are first term. You're so brave. You show up. Immediately, you go right in and do the right thing. It's amazing. And the ones that are second term, basically, they went through the first term and they thought, what the heck? We're going to do something to try to change things. I'm amazed by how brave and how bold you guys are. So I think that, of course, you already know this, Keith, but we're from Howell County, and Kevin and I were so excited to visit with you. But I have to talk to you first, ask you about something that you had in your bio. I met Keith on our front porch this evening, and I said, you look like your ancestor. One of Keith's ancestors, would have been your uncle, right? A man named Chester Elliott was a World War II paratrooper, and of course, being the history nerd, which I am, especially after talking to you and hearing it, like I said, you're a cowboy. I had to Google him and check him out. Online, there was an online article, and I want Keith to tell us a little bit about him too. Military Hall of Honor was what it was called. Keith said he had the same article. But it started out with Chester Elliott was one of the most dangerous men in the 101st Airborne Division.
Mark Twain was the most dangerous man, according to Teddy Roosevelt.
I wonder if he was a mugwump.
It's a possibility.
Well, that was beyond the age of the
I'm sure he was a
mugwumps.
disruptor.
Right, there you go, a disruptor.
He was from the Ozarks. He's a disruptor.
He parachuted into Normandy, present on D-Day. He was in the Battle of the Bulge, froze his feet. Because he wouldn't quit shooting and fighting, and he almost had to have them amputated.
Hard-headed Ozark boy.
Oh, my gosh. And he was a deadly sharpshooter. Private first class, he threatened his commanding officer. He said, you make me a sergeant, and I'm going AWOL. I love that. And that reminds me of you, Keith. That reminds me of you because you're that way, too. You know, people who go into Jefferson City sometimes, they think about, well, if I do this or that, I'm not going to get voted for and have another term. But you and the other disruptors, you and the other 10, that's the one thing. One of the things that they all say is, you know what? We're going to do what's right no matter what. You know, we're not worried about a pension. We're not worried about another term. The first time I talked to you on the phone, you said, I really like my ranch. I don't know that I want to be there all the time, but he said, basically Keith said, you know, my constituents, he loves his constituents. And he said, my friends and family and constituents wanted me to run, so I did. Tell us, did you have something to add about this? This guy's great. He got a Purple Heart, 10 other awards. He was a cowboy. John Wayne.
He was. He was a very humble guy, not a great big man in stature, but he was a handful. He cut timber. He was a timber cutter. He cut timber till he was up in his mid-70s.
Oh, my goodness.
He was just a rough guy, but he was a very gentle guy at the same time. We loved Uncle Chester. He lived to a very ripe old age of 99 and 2 months, and he was on the go right up till then. Part of the story that I haven't told this a whole lot, but he played a pivotal role in me running for this position.
Are you serious?
He has no idea because he had already passed away. But
in 2020.
When it came about that people had asked me to run for this position, to be a state representative, I really, really wanted to put some thought into that. It was just not anything I took lightly. I said, give me a couple of weeks, I want to pray about this and figure out what God would have me to do and something that I, feel like I should do. And so it come to that 2 weeks, I had been back and forth. I mean, it was a tough decision to make, honestly, because I have a very blessed life. I love my farm. I love being able to go visit my kids, and I love being able to go on my mission trips, do the things that I want to do, help folks if they need help. And the last night, it was on a Friday night. I'll never forget this. But I had weaned some calves, and I'm watering my calves. It's dark out. It's 8 o'clock at night. It's in the, I guess, October, late October. And I'm watering my calves. And I'm just standing there, and all of a sudden, it was as clear as day. I felt like God just said to me, you know, my Uncle Chester, he had risked his life across the world, risked his life for our people and for freedom, ready to die for freedom. At the same time, my son-in-law was in the Army Reserve, and he may be called up at any time. And I really felt like God saying to me, if these two men can do this, the very least you can do is answer a call to the Capitol.
Wow.
And at that minute, that made things just incredibly clear to me. And that's when I made my phone calls. I said, hey, I'm in, and here we go. And then I was ready to work as hard as I had to make this happen. I feel like, and so God's calling, that is it. If it wasn't for that, I wouldn't be here.
You know, where we were raised, that is a very common family story. My family, I grew up in the cemeteries around. I always went, and I'll never forget, Decoration Day was what the old timers called it. Mm-hmm. It was actually the Ozarks.
You should read that. That was from Chester's.
Juanita's wanting me to read something here. This is part of Chester's.
His family was in the Ozarks wilderness of Howell County.
There you go. His family lived and worked on a small farm in the Ozarks wilderness of Missouri, and Chester grew up with a rifle in his hands. The people from that part of Missouri are a hardy bunch. They have a strong sense of right and wrong, have no hesitation whatsoever about speaking their minds, and it does not matter to whom they are talking. And in the Ozarks, them old-timers that I grew up around, and you too, if they set their mind to do something and you tried to talk them out of it, you were not going to do it because they'd already thought things through. And you know what? I grew up with that influence, and you did too. But you know what? When we set our mind to something, people, a lot of times people say, well, they'll try to talk me out of something, and the only response I've got for it anymore is, that's just not going to work for me. This is what I've got to do. And that's important. That's important. And what you said there, that it's neat to see that background.
Well, Kevin, I think, too, something that's very important from a lineage perspective. I can look back at my uncles, my family, very simple ways of life. They enjoyed the simple things in life, working hard all the time. But fame, publicity, stature, none of those things ever was in the conversation.
No.
They could care less about being important or being known or being remembered. It was all about, what can I do for the next generation? What can I do for my family? I want to do whatever it takes to take care of my family and my people. And so there's just a very strong background of that patronage to family and patriotism.
Oh, yeah.
Hard work and loyalty and taking care of your family and your neighbors. The neighbors were always so important too, you know, and that's something we've lost a lot in our culture now is our neighborhoods. You know what? You may not be able to see your neighbor in the Ozarks, but you knew who your neighbors were, and you knew if something was wrong that you would go and do everything you could to help them out, and they would do the same for you.
Yeah, it's just, if I could add a quick little ditty.
Go ahead.
You know, my this past weekend, I had plans for this week. It's going to be a big week, and I couldn't wait to get to spring break. I wanted to go see my daughter and my son-in-law and spend some time with them in Tulsa. And then Friday night, we have these terrible storms go through our district, and it just wrecked our district. We had 4 counties hit, multiple tornadoes in every county. So Saturday morning, I was on the road, and I was in Piedmont, and then the governor stopped in, and Senator and Bean, and they stopped. We looked at damage. I spent the next 3 days traveling every county I had, looking at damage. And on Sunday after church, I grabbed something to eat, and I'm going around Ripley County to check and get pictures and see what we had. And I'll not forget, it was at dark. I was still on the go, and a pastor, one of the pastors in our community I have a lot of respect for, seen him on the road. I met him, and he said, you don't have to do this. And I said, but that's what we're here for. I work for you, and this is what I signed up for. And he said, people, they will still love you even if you don't do this. They know you're out to help them. They know you're trying, and they know you're going to do everything you can. And I said, that's fine, but I still answered a call to do this. And so I'm going to be here until my people choose something different or God has a different plan for me, but I'm going to give them everything I got. So, and God has blessed us over there. It's just been a lot of damage. We lost 6 lives in Wayne County, just devastating. People putting their homes back together, their lives back together, and then have to deal with a family member or a friend who's lost their life. So it just breaks my heart. And so those are the times that make this job so worthwhile, when I can make some phone calls and we can get help in, and watching neighbors helping neighbors, or people just stopping by and say, hey, can we help you somewhere? That's just an interesting. I love living in Southeast Missouri. It's just God's country.
Yes,
really
yes.
is.
I miss the days when a house would burn, a family would lose a home, and before daylight, there'd be a load of logs dropped off at the sawmill. The sawmill saw it, they'd haul it out, and by that next afternoon, everybody was over there helping them build their house back. You know what? We need to get back to those days.
That's exactly right.
That's
Yes.
so
Yes.
true. So true. I love that. That's awesome. Your family were pioneers and cowboys. They were. Your ancestor, Chester, was basically John Wayne. I could just see him acting in one of those John Wayne movies that he was always in, the military movies. Obviously, courage to make hard choices is in your DNA. You remind me, like we were just saying, of so many people from back home, just moral characters, strong characters. Keith, what would you say, and you've already described it, but if you had to put it in a couple of sentences, and this is what I've been asking all of you guys, what would you say is your absolute North Star, the factor or factors that are guiding your decision-making up there at Jefferson City?
I would have to say it is literally my spiritual conviction. At my age, and as long as my people typically live, I could have another 30, 40 years on this earth.
Chester was 99.
I could. Yeah, and I have another aunt that I love to death. My Aunt Jewel is just turned 99 also. And she's still going and living on her own. So I could live a long time, in our years. However, 30 or 40 years is not very long. It's just a little while.
A blip.
Most of my life is already behind me. I know that, and I acknowledge that. And that's okay, because I know where I will go when I leave this earth. However, there is no way that I will make a decision that I cannot justify to my Savior when I stand on my judgment day. Nothing is worth that. There is no amount of money. I'm not wealthy, and I'm not poor. I have enough. And for me and my daughter and my son-in-law and their family to come, we've been blessed. We really have. And so we have enough. And so, that is my North Star in everything in my life. I have my struggles like everybody else does, but making a bad decision for gain of fame or fortune or anything else is not going to be one of them.
Yeah, amen, for sure. And that's what they're all saying. That's what they all say for their constituents. They want to represent their constituents. They couldn't not be true to them and God. That's correct. Just absolutely.
Yep. And the families, that legacy, what we leave, that is something that is left. Our families have been so fractured. And even in the Ozarks, back in the 80s, we were starting out, and I had to go all the way out west in the 70s just to find a job, because there was no jobs, because we had it was a Carter administration. All the jobs left. And then after that, when things started healing, next thing you know, NAFTA and CAFTA come. And I know these young people don't know about that, but every community in the Ozarks at one time had a garment factory, they had a hat factory, and they had a shoe factory. There was industry in the Ozarks, and every community had, because of that, you had feed stores, you had the cattle farmers. The Ozarks was a wonderful place. It was every community had structure. Every community had churches. And you know what? There was community then. Grandin. it's not even on the map anymore. But at one time, in the heart of the Ozarks down there, every railroad track ran there. That was the largest sawmill in the world.
Yeah, dominated the tie industry for years.
Absolutely. And then after NAFTA and CAFTA, and back in the 60s, the government started coming in and buying ground for a national park. Now, there's nothing wrong with those things. You know what? We do need some parks. But it's gone to such an extreme level that back home there's no economy anymore. Matter of fact, Oregon County, there's no money there because all the government ground, they don't pay tax. So the locals, you wind up, everybody has moved away. Literally, the population has declined in the Ozarks because of how the economy's been crushed. And those are some of the things that we're seeing now. It's going on everywhere. It seems like they're trying to drive everybody into an apartment somewhere. And that's an awful wide sweeping stroke, but you know what? Communities are necessary. Churches, you know what? There's mega churches, but you know what? I wish people could have experienced some of the churches that we got to go to. You know, sometimes 20 people in a church, oh my goodness, that was the biggest service you ever went to sometimes because God speaks to his people. And those little communities, when you know everybody, you know every need, you become very close and you begin to realize the humanity and what Jesus really did. He was Jesus is our friend. And when you got those smaller communities, you realize what a friend Jesus is, and you see Jesus work in those people that you know everything about.
Yeah, that's exactly right, Kevin. And two, for our district in particular, everything you say is resonating all the way across my district.
Yes.
All those communities have levels of poverty. They are structured where there's little income. Schools are teetering. Everything is just on the brink, and folks are struggling just to make a decent living. Kids are leaving, and folks have talked to me over and over about we just get some industry in here to build the communities back, but this government initiative to divvy out all these entitlements. The old saying, I think, when somebody said, give a man a fish and you feed him for a day, but teach him to fish, you feed him forever. Well, I think that must have come from some kind of government organization because they want to give everybody a fish each day. And I think the government, they enjoy that. It gives them control, manipulation. But what that does, it also steals integrity, it steals ethic, it steals so many things from new generations coming. And I've told the folks, I said, even if I could talk a business into coming, and I might be able to, and invest in our communities, and they need 75 good, solid employees. Can you provide that without stealing them all from other businesses around? And all of them that I've talked to looked me in the eye and said, probably not. And it's such a sad thing, and I hate that. We have to change this culture. People have to desire to say, I'm going to take care of myself.
Yes.
I'm going to have integrity and character, and I want to raise my kids and pay for their bills and take care of my spouse, and I want to raise my family where we take care of ourselves. And not only that, then we can help take care of the neighbor or somebody else who's hurting. I mean, the Bible's very clear. It says, work so that you may have enough to give to those who have not. And so it's very, God laid this out long before we were all here. And when we go against those things, those teachings, there's a consequence to pay.
Yes.
And we're in that consequence.
And we've strayed so far away from those values that I still can't believe this, but we got one of the most liberal abortion laws, it looks like, coming up. And that is not us. That is not Missouri. And then the minimum wage going up like it has. California, we see what this does. We've seen it out there, and now there's some of their politicians and people out there screaming they want $50 an hour.
Yeah.
It's not going to end. This IP reform, these things have to be cared for. And and that's and that was a lot of what Justin, and that is what has to be cared for. So how are we going to get there?
Well, the interesting part of that is after we got to the Capitol, in a caucus meeting, our speaker made the statement that IP reform and pushing back on Amendment 3 was going to be our number one and number two objective. And so I was excited about that. I was excited to hear that. I have yet to see it. I've yet to see anything, and we're at spring break. And so I don't know what is on the table. I don't know what the agenda is. how far forward that's moving. I'm really itching to see that come to the floor, and let's get to work on it, because we're going to run out of time again.
Oh, yes. And that's, well, I actually, whenever we did the interview with Lisa, I actually gave out the information. I think I'm going to look it up again. Folks, we need to continue. I was sending them emails, and I think we need to send them more emails because, we're just not seeing it happen. And here we've been told once again, what is this, year number 8 now? That they've told us every year, and then mysteriously it doesn't get passed. And you know what? I'm actually going to look that up right now. I think I took a picture of it. And
I'll go ahead and give the commentary. Juanita
yeah.
is scrolling through her cell phone as we speak, looking for that stuff,
because
that
it's
information.
Yes. It's time to just pay a friendly phone call or an email to their office. Jonathan Patterson, who is the Speaker of the House, his email is Jonathan, it's capital JONATHAN .Patterson, of course, capital PATTERSON, at house.mo.gov. So you should just send him a friendly email. His office phone number, too, is 573-751-0907. Floor leader Alex Riley, well, he needs to get a friendly email or phone call, too. His email is capital ALEX .Riley and that would be capital RILEY at house.mo.gov. The number is 573-751-2210. And folks, you don't have to be mean, but basically whenever when they answer their phone or whenever you email them, just say, we were told, as Keith just said, we were told that IP reform and fixing Amendment 3 are the top priorities. We're not seeing any evidence, and it's already the end of March. You might just tell them that you are disappointed and looking for what was promised, and we're going to be watching and expecting that they're going to do what they promised.
Yes.
Right?
Absolutely.
But, send out an email or give them a phone call or both. And again, don't be mean to the nice little folks who answer the phone. They're taking a tally and figuring out who's calling them and delivering the message. So that's a good thing. Sorry, I had to say that. I actually took a picture of it because I was already thinking we needed to do that again.
Well, now you've done it.
It's very disappointing, very, very disappointing. And,
yes.
This is like year 8. And like I said the other day on Brian's interview, it's Groundhog Day.
Yeah, it is.
At what point do we stop listening to people who obviously don't have our goals in mind?
Yes.
And start taking the bull by the horns? See, now I'm talking like somebody from back home.
Well, I think Keith might be an influence on you here.
Keith, you're influencing me. And reading about your ancestor this afternoon influenced me, I got to say.
And some folks might get upset about Keith taking that side and representing people, but you know what? I'm pretty sure Keith's the guy, if their house is on fire and he was driving by, he'd stop,
Absolutely.
Get out, and do what he could to help them out.
I so agree.
To go along, Juanita, with what you just said and what you just read, and telling people to call in.
Yeah.
One of the biggest things for me, when I first became a Christian, I was 25. Mm-hmm. And I dove into my scripture and I learned, and in about 3 years, I was teaching a men's group. And so I taught a lot of groups along the way. But one of the scriptures that always resonated with me was Ezekiel 33, the watchman's message. And that was huge for me because it just had such a conviction on my heart that, basically the watchman stands on the wall and he warns when the enemy's coming. And if people do nothing, their blood is on their own hands.
That's right.
Absolutely.
But if he does not warn them, then their blood, and they die in their sin, their blood is on his hands. And that really laid heavy on me. So when I went to the Capitol, in my mind, I'm headed up there to make law, to vote new legislation in, to make Missouri better, all these things that I had in my mind that I was going to do. When I got there, I felt like I was right back, as I've really got a good feel of things. I felt like I was right back to that day when I got saved and I began to read, and I read Ezekiel. I feel like now I'm out here to warn the people and give them the message to say, know what your legislator is doing, including me. Look at what I'm doing. Look at how I'm voting. Look at where my finances is coming from and what they're being spent on. And anybody can do that. Anybody can access that information. People need to educate themselves. Lack of education is killing us politically.
That's
because
right.
These folks out in the country or who's not attached to the Capitol in some way or another have no idea what's going on up there.
That's right.
And I can't encourage them enough to educate themselves. I know it's trouble. I know it takes time. I know it takes concerted effort, but do not wait till you're in a position to say, how did this happen?
I'm reminded of Joshua and Caleb when they went in and they went out on the scouting party.
That's right.
And there was others went, and most of them came back and they said, it's hopeless. You know what? There are giants there, and there's no way we're going to do this. But I like the fire you got. You know what? You and Bert and the rest of the 10, they're coming back home and saying, this is what's going on. They're giving us a report, and they're also trying to encourage us. You know what? That representative, you're representing not just us going there, but you're representing what's going on. You're coming back as a witness of what needs done. And we appreciate that, I'll tell you. And that puts the responsibility on us, the people. You know what? And more than that, the church. You quoted Scripture, and you know what? If we're going to claim to be Christians, and we've got to follow God's word. And what you said about being the watchman, everybody knew what was going on in all these last elections. And you know what? How many of God's people did not vote?
That's right.
And we got to lay that
there
on
were
ourselves.
Christians who voted for that.
Oh, I know, and that it has really, it's really set a fire in me, honestly, because there's so many churches, and I ain't going to call names, but so many churches and so many pastors who will not speak on abortion or the sin of homosexuality or whatever it may be, simply because they didn't want to take the heat publicly. They didn't want to take the heat politically, or maybe lose their tax exemption. And I'm saying, you've got to be kidding me. Is that what you're going to stand at your judgment day and say, Jesus, I was going to lose my tax exemption if I preached on abortion?
That's right.
I just, so I'm really, it's hard for me to get my head wrapped around what's going on with some of this. And so therefore we had a lot of folks who, claimed the Christian faith and walked out and voted for Amendment 3.
There are.
Or just didn't vote at all.
Or didn't vote at all.
And that being the watchman, once we're made aware of these things, we are responsible. And on the bright side, you know what? I think there's been an awakening take place, because when this all happened, none of us believe it happened. And those that didn't go out and vote, I think they're starting to realize how important it is.
Yeah.
And all the more, you know what? Rather than being discouraging and going out and just blaming all the churches that didn't vote, it's time for us to start speaking. And what you said, education, I think their intent's good. And you know what? God's people are the majority in our state. And we just got to, we got to start building those bridges back. We was talking about communities, that community and caring for one another. The 10 Commandments are good, but Jesus boiled it down to 2. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, all your soul, all your mind, all your strength. We've got the word. We do what it says. And the other thing is love your neighbor as yourself. And those two things, you know what? That is the solution.
Absolutely.
And it's up to us to carry that message out there.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I agree.
For sure. I have a couple more questions for you. First of all, I want to hear your story about how you ended up voting for Justin Sparks. Everybody has, that has come in has talked about their account. That was a hard decision. And it strikes me that it wasn't necessarily hard for you, because talking to you, and like I said, you're a cowboy. I think that you probably just knew that was the thing to do. So it's like, okay, well, this is what I'm going to do. And you went and did it.
Yeah, that was exactly it. I didn't have a background in state politics. I had gotten somewhat of an education through the campaign process, but I didn't know who is who. I didn't know how a lot of things worked. And so, it was all kind of brand new. I just kind of stumbled into the Capitol, still had cow manure on my boots when I went in.
There you go.
So I go in, but I had heard the rumblings of the speaker race, how unpopular it was, what was going on. I already knew at Winter Caucus that Justin had just been beat up at Winter Caucus. I did not like that. at that time, I didn't even know Justin Sparks. So it was really irrelevant. He gets beat up, but all I knew is that wasn't right. And it could have been handled completely differently. Even no matter how mad you are at the guy, how disappointed, how he'd done things wrong in their mind, whatever it may have been, that was not the way to do it in that format, to beat him up politically in front of everybody. So that irritated me. However, I've done the same thing I'm asking everybody else to do. I went and looked at voting records. And the minute I seen John Patterson's voting record, and that he had voted twice against IP reform, he had voted against the SAFE Act. I seen the video where he had said at the Kansas City Chamber of Commerce, we will not push back on Amendment 3. If it passes, it will be the law of the land. And I never spoke to him before in my life, neither one of them. So I said, well, that guy is not a conservative, obviously, and he and I is probably not going to jihad. So we are just going to.
Should we translate that?
We can maybe.
Oh, yeah, that's giving your mule directions, left and right.
That's
and
right.
haul. Yes.
See, I'm recognizing this. I'm getting it.
Sorry, it's kind of like a homecoming. We're having a family reunion here.
That's right. That's right. So I knew I couldn't sleep on my pillow that night and rest if I voted for this guy. I couldn't. Now, I did check into Justin's record. I did end up talking to Justin on the phone one time before the vote, but all of that was irrelevant. I walked in and I could not vote for John Patterson. I just couldn't do it. So I went in and I hit the no button, and it wouldn't have mattered if it was the only red light that came up on the board. I can live with that decision. I can live with it, and I can justify it before everyone else who's conservatives, who calls themselves Christians. I can justify that vote easily.
That's right.
And John Patterson and we've had that conversation already. And I sit down and I told him exactly what I just said. I said, hey, I couldn't vote you. It's nothing personal. I didn't even know you. And I wasn't that I didn't like you or whatever. He seems like a nice enough guy. He really does. But I said, as a Christian and a conservative, I can't vote for a moderate speaker. So I'm a conservative, a Christian. So, and he nodded. He seemed to be okay with that, and he understood. It wasn't a big deal. So when all the other red lights went off, that's good too. But I didn't realize the implications that probably went with all that whenever I made that vote.
Yes.
There was people kind of give you the stink eye, or they would give you, let you just threw away your next 2 political, years in office. And these comments were made, which not a lot of them was made to me.
Patronage. That's what that is.
Yeah. And so I just okay, but I came here to take care of my people then. And if I don't get to file a bill, then I will just take darn good care of my people. And that's what I was going to do anyway. So that's how I got there.
That is just infuriating, because it's like, we just got to do what the speaker says, or we won't get this and this and this. That is exactly what sparked the Mugwump Revolution in 1884, that very thing. It was called the spoils system.
Yes.
And they actually made a law against that, I think the next year. It actually had implications. It cleaned it up for a little while, but of course, we clean things up and then we go back to being crazy and corrupt. And hopefully this time, whenever we get some of this stuff cleaned up, it won't do that. Hopefully God will bless us and we'll be coming back to him, because that's what we need to do. We need to come back to God.
Well, we've got the greatest story ever told. It's the details between here and there that we got to work out in times like this.
That's right.
Yeah. I loved I love that. That just was music to my heart. Whenever you said, I knew I had to hit that red button, or that red button. And if nobody else hit it, that wouldn't have mattered, because you were willing to be out there twisting in the wind all by yourself. And you know what? The other 10 were too.
Yeah, that's right.
Or the other 9. And that's one of the things I just love about them, is they were willing to do that.
It's refreshing to see people doing the right thing because it's the right thing to do.
Instead of everybody hiding. One of the things that we got from someone, he didn't go about it the right way, and, he's not going to win anyway. And really, if all of them would have done the right thing too, he would have.
Yes.
We got to get rid of that attitude. That's just got to go away.
The
It just
negotiation shouldn't be up at the Capitol. It should be with the constituents. And when the representative goes up to represent the people he's representing, his vote should count as that representative. And there shouldn't be barriers between him and his vote that he makes there. You know, you shouldn't have to do something to go ahead and be able to vote. We didn't send him up. We didn't send our representative up there to try to figure out how he could get his vote in to represent us, not to negotiate anything with anybody. We sent him up there with a message. This is what we want. And he needs to ask that, you know, or she. You know what? We've got a lot of good representatives up there, and they're so intimidated because everything's been so confused. There's good representatives there.
There is.
And you know what? If this IP reform was put to vote on the floor, if everybody was left alone and you get all this corruption out of it, there's no doubt that the people of the state have spoken.
System.
And it is not about negotiating things. It is about going up there and saying, we want IP reform done. We do not accept abortion. You know, these things are simple. And just let the vote fall where it may.
I had one fellow representative walked up to me, and this was later on, but we were discussing priorities and how you vote. And the comment was made, he said, you vote your caucus first, your constituents second, and your conscience third. And I looked at him and I said, I don't think so. I vote my conscience first, my constituents second, and
Amen.
caucus is behind that somewhere.
Amen.
And but you're right. There is a lot of good people up there. There's a lot of good people, I think, who originally went up just like
Absolutely,
me with good
yes.
intentions. What is bizarre to me, and I really struggle to comprehend, is how weak so many of them are when it comes to looking at being out in the cold. You know, I've been out in the cold before. I'm thick-skinned and hard-headed, and so, you know, it's okay. You're only usually out there for so long.
Your feet aren't getting
it
froze.
It only gets so cold out there.
Yeah.
And sometimes you find out it's warmer there than it is inside. So, you know, it is pretty sad and frustrating to me to see some folks that I think really are better than that, have better intentions, and not just on the vote for the speaker, but many other things. But yet they will sacrifice, they will trade their integrity to make sure they're on the right side of a vote. And it does make me a little queasy when I see some of this happening.
You know, it's just not how we were raised, is it?
And no, it's not. I mean, my mom and dad, if they seen me do something like that, if they were alive today and they seen me make a vote or something like that, it'd be a bad day. It wouldn't matter if I was 20 or if I was 50.
That's right.
They would let me know just
Yes.
exactly.
Yes.
You were raised better than that.
Yes.
You knew better than that. That ain't the decisions we make. So, you know, I think that's some of my struggles is watching some of the others.
So how do we encourage them? How do we help them? I guess that's what we need to try to figure out here is how to. Mike Moon said we need to bring folks home, you know, back to their, you know, where they hear their heart, because everybody's up there. Everybody wants to feel good about themselves, and everybody wants to do the right thing, and they want to have friends and allies. Sometimes you don't when you do the right thing, but you know what? When everybody, when you wind up being the odd man out, and you realize everybody around you said something, and you thought, "Oh, wait a minute, they're right." You know, it's okay. You know, you can go ahead and you can come back home.
Well, for everyone who claims the blood of Christ has redeemed them. How many times did Jesus do what was right? And look at his reward for that.
Yes.
So, you know, when you've spoken to Mike Moon several times, you know, and when I met Mike, and he seemed so thrilled to see us there.
Oh, he was.
But I don't know that I've ever taken the opportunity, because a lot of times I don't talk a whole lot. I listen a whole lot. And, but Mike was such an encouragement to me to listen to his testimony. That man has been forged in the fire by himself.
That's right.
For a long time.
He was the pioneer.
Yeah, and so
just him.
I didn't even know Mike Moon's name till I stepped up there, made this vote, and then somebody says, "You've got to meet Mike Moon." And I'm, great, sure. And I go meet him and hear his testimony. This dude's a solid dude, and he just encourages me and just builds a fire in me that, you know, is really exciting.
you know what? We've got a Capitol full of good people. I know we're the majority up there, and I know
A lot of them are just timid
what
and
you said,
brainwashed.
education,
Some of them are just brainwashed.
education. We've just got to have these conversations. Civil discourse and conversations are so necessary. And isn't that ultimately what's happening with this speaker in the floor position? They're keeping the people from talking about these things. What's the chance of you being able to go up and speak to the whole assembly?
Pretty slim right now, probably.
And that actually kind of steps on the last question that I was going to ask him. Repercussions.
Yes.
I know this is your first term, but you had talked about there are definitely some repercussions that you've seen.
Yeah, there was, I have gotten, I think I asked for 3 committees. I ended up getting one of the ones I asked for. I ended up getting 2. I didn't know what the average was. I thought it was probably more than that. Poor Maisie Christensen has gotten 5 committees, and one of those is the budget.
Oh, my.
And I don't know whether...
she's busy.
She's busy. She's really busy, and she's rock solid. I just have a great admiration for her and where she stood her ground. But, maybe is really want to keep her busy. And so... But some of the others, I think Lisa has only got 2 committees also. And so, it's really easy to begin to try to assume why and what. I've really got to the age where I try not to do that. I try not to make assumptions. So, and I've got a couple bills that I have filed in early on. And so not a lot of our bills, I'm trying to think if any of them has made it through committee at this point. I don't think any of them have. And so that's okay. We already have, in my opinion, too many laws on the books anyway, even though I feel like my ideas are good.
Yes.
But there's a lot of some really silly stuff that don't make sense. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. I think definitely you're kind of looked at a little bit sideways. And although I've had some great conversations with the floor leader, Alex Riley, I've had a couple conversations with John Patterson. And in fact, he assured me that right before we left for spring break, that one of my bills was headed to committee when we get back from spring break. So I'm anxious to see. I'm excited about that, and we'll see what happens. And if it makes it there, fantastic. If it don't, we'll do it again next year.
This has been so awesome.
Yes.
I have did you have anything else that you wanted a statement you wanted to make to your constituents, to the people, or is there anything you could think of that you would like to leave folks with? And just so you know, you're always welcome back. We would love to have you back. There's going to be a lot of stuff that that's going to need to be updated.
Sure.
Yes.
I appreciate that. I guess I want my constituents to know and always understand they are going to come first. I'm going to take care of my folks as long as they want me in this position to take care of them.
That's your title.
And when they don't, then God will have a different mission for me, and I'll move on to something else. But until then, I'll work hard for them. And we just have such good people. We have a lot of good people. I'm really proud to live where I live and be where I'm at and serve the people that I serve. And not only, that's every day in the communities and checking on them, calling them, or whatever. So I just want the folks to know that. Honestly, legislation is not my number one priority. Everybody, I see so many folks that it's so important to have a bill. I think so many of these folks, these good folks that we've talked about, have lost their identity. The minute they stepped into the Capitol, all of a sudden it's like I am somebody. But the reality is I have a new license plate, I have a new title, but it's all only very temporary.
Yes.
And it's not about me. I went up to go to work for everybody else. So it's a job, and it has turned into a lot. It not only encompasses all my week at session at the Capitol, it encompasses my life when I go home too. So if you do it the way I think it's designed to be done, and you work for your people, it is a busy job. I'll just say that. And so I wish we could get to the point where our people would be making those decisions on what they would have us to do at the Capitol. And people's going to have to be educated. And I encourage my people, most of all, in District 153, get educated and know what your representative, your senator, and all the rest of them are doing, and get the word out.
Yes, for sure. For sure.
Well, we appreciate you being up there.
We sure do. And I have loved visiting with you guys. I was telling Keith earlier, I think God placed you all there at just the right time. You all converged, and you didn't know about each other.
No, not
But
at all.
now you do. And now there's all of you, and you've got each other. It's wonderful. I know you meet. Lisa said you all have been calling yourselves the remnant,
Yeah.
because that's kind of what you are. And I started doing bios basically just to kind of introduce, but, to their constituents as they released the videos and shared them with everybody. But I learned a lot. And it's like God showed me. Do you remember the old movie? I think it was the John Hughes movie in the 80s, The Breakfast Club, where you had, it was kind of this dumb movie.
Yeah.
But it had a group of kids that got together. They were in trouble on Saturdays, but each one of them had an identity, and they became friends. And
Right.
it reminds me a little bit of that. Justin was the tip of the spear. He was the leader. He showed up, and it was time for you all. There's a time for everything, and I think this was the time. Mike Moon had been going it alone for all those years and just looking around and waiting and watching. Is somebody else going to show up? Am I always going to be alone? And boom, here comes the sheepdog, the leader. And then everyone else, not knowing if anyone else was going to vote, bravely stood up there, watchman on the wall, and voted. And God brought you all together. When we were doing the interview with Bryant, I said, because we were praying, we were there that day, and we were out in the hall praying for anybody, whoever God brought up to vote. We prayed for you all. And that was what I told Bryant. I said, nobody knew, but God did, because he chose each one of you. And your story of how you were called to be there sounds exactly like everybody else's.
Yes.
God was speaking to all of you at the same time, and you all showed up at the same time. You're the cowboy, and you're a mugwump, just so you know. And Lisa and Bob Titus, those two are numbers guys and gal.
Yeah.
Very logical, astute thinkers, both of them. Mm-hmm. And boy, is she a go-getter.
Oh, yeah.
You've got Bryant, who is he is a young leader. Justin is the one who stepped up, but Bryant, he's a leader in the same way.
Absolutely.
For his generation. You've got Bert Whaley, who is just the biggest heart. He has a heart the size of Texas. What a faith. We go to church with him.
Sure.
Oh my gosh, the others, just all of them that we have interviewed, every one of you all have your own place. It's like the body of Christ. It's amazing. I was just telling him when he came in, it's a God thing. God is moving. And this may be something that takes a while, but you don't despise small beginnings. That's right. Because this is how God gets big things done. But we're just so proud of you. Somebody from back home doing this. This has been like an old homecoming visiting with you because, like I said, we understand your jargon.
Well, it's, there was a time I had in my life planned out. I would always have a plan, usually a plan A, B, C, and D for everything. And I think as you get older, you just get smarter, you get wiser, and you're more inclined to just let God say, all right, whatever, wherever you want me to go, this is good, whatever. And so it's exciting right now, even though I have no idea what he wants to do. That's what's exciting.
None of the rest of them do either.
Yeah, and so I'm looking forward to how this is all going to play out. I really am.
Oh, me too.
We're not responsible for the outcome.
That's right.
We're responsible to be obedient. You know
That's
what?
right.
God's going to bless that. And I believe this is an awakening that is going to surprise us all. How long it's going to take, I don't know. But you know what? God has favor on his people when they're obedient. And I think if we just continue walking, keep looking to him, you know what? This is going to be a wonderful time.
Yep.
Absolutely.
I agree.
Well, this has been a thoroughly enjoyable visit with Representative Keith Elliott. It's kind of like taking a little trip back home on the back roads, one of my favorite things to do. Thank you, Keith, for joining us and sharing your perspective and for a really encouraging glimpse of the real Missouri, the Missouri that Kevin and I know, and the real people across the state. not what we're being told is real and true by politicians. And folks, since this interview was recorded just before the end of spring break, we have a little legislative update that we will be recording and posting over the next few days. But I'm going to warn you, don't hold your breath. I can tell you that the big fix for Amendment 3 and the big priority of IP reform that we were all promised in January were coming. Well, let's just say that the stuff dribbling out at this point isn't quite what we were hoping for. But there are some things that are moving. There are some insights and some gems that I think you all will find instructive and even encouraging. So until then, thanks for joining us again today. We hope that you're having a great day wherever you are, and we'll be back again soon with more information, more conversation, and hopefully, folks, some encouragement to keep you informed, inspired, and always independent. God bless.